The year is 1936, a June day. A man is cutting peat from the bog between Gavilan Farm and Skjold. Suddenly, the spade cuts down at the feet of a corpse deep in the marsh. It was wrapped in a blanket, bound in a bundle by thin leather straps and narrow woven ribbons. Throughout the 20th century, people have been stumbling over bodies, quite literally, found in bogs. The Skjoldehamn body was found in a marsh area just outside Andøya, Norway in 1936. The body was wrapped in a shroud with clothing, including breeches, underkirtle, kirtle, hood, and accessories. More recent carbon-14 dating has revealed that the burial actually took place in the 11th century, the end of the Viking era, opening up the possibility that it may involve quite normal pagan burial customs, either of the Norse pagans or the Sami people. The DNA studies of the skeleton from 1999 concluded that the skeleton was missing the Sami-specific genetic marker and that the DNA lacked a Y chromosome. This would lead me to believe that the body is of Norse genetic makeup and a female. I would therefore suggest that the body is a Norse female who has married into a Sami family. The breeches. The breeches are of a common construction: the rectangular rear extension piece, the waistband casing with a drawstring, and the split at the bottom of each pant leg. These were also made of wool and had a woven trim couched on the bottom cuff of the leg. These would not traditionally have been worn by a Norse woman. However, there is a custom within the Sami tribe for women to wear pants, especially during the freezing months. You'll notice that the extant breeches are very low slung on the hips. While this is consistent with other breeches of the time, I personally am very uncomfortable with a low waistband, so my breeches were cut with a higher waistband. I also found that the thighs were too tight to wear comfortably, so I have added 2 additional triangle gores into the upper inseam of my breeches. The slits on the bottom of the pants make them easier to get on over shoes or boots. The fancy section around the slit, you'll notice, only goes up to the hem of the kirtle, which seems eminently practical to me. Once finished, I found these pants to be extremely comfortable. All of my seams are sewn with a back stitch and then flat felled with a whip stitch. You'll see here that I am pulling tension against a pin at one end while stitching, and that every 5 stitches or so is a locking stitch. There are many pieces of trim on this outfit, all of which I wove on this inkle loom. While it was probably made using a back strap rather than an inkle loom like this, the loom creates the same weave without breaking my back, so that seemed preferable to me. The waistband tie was made from a thin red and white inkle trim. The cuff trim was counted off of the extant trim to create the pattern that I used here. The cap. The cap was created using a pattern based on an arming cap of the time. It's made to give extra protection on the neck, which seemed useful in a colder climate. Other than a suggestion that there might have been a cap, there is no further mention of the cap or hairstyle in the archaeological record. I have dressed my hair in a ribbon knot, which you can see on these 2 examples of Valkyries in artwork of the time. Once trained to do this style, this requires no pins or ties in your hair. It's very easy and it holds a lot of hair. As you can see, here is my hair down versus in the knot. The underkirtle. The underkirtle was shorter and narrower than the kirtle, and it looked as if it was made from an old kirtle. If, as I'm suggesting, a Norse woman married into a Sami family, she would naturally strive to fit in with the customs of her new culture. This would include taking her clothing and recutting it to fit into the societal norms of the Sami people. For the underkirtle, this would be cut shorter than the main kirtle with a decorated breastcloth and a raised collar. While these would be common elements of Sami clothing, it would not be normal for a Norse woman. The decorated breastcloth and collar have striped fabric on them. I was not able to find the fabric required, and although I really wanted to weave my own fabric, the timing of the project would not allow me to, although that is a project in my future. Instead, I created the stripes using inkle trim in a repetitive pattern sewn together. I think that it achieved a similar look without needing to weave my own fabric. The kirtle. The kirtle reaches midway between the knee and the ankle and has a V-shaped collar. This collar is one of the most noticeably Sami elements of the outfit. There are side, front, and back gores, and interestingly, the slit for the back gore was cut crooked. It's kind of nice to think about a seamstress 1,000 years ago making a little mistake like that. She was probably really annoyed. The collar has 2 layers of wool. I have used a dark green and a purplish burgundy wool. These were not ordered specifically for the project, but came out of my scrap box. First, the pieces were whip stitched down and then edged in herringbone stitching in red and green. You can see here that I have already laid down the red herringbone stitches and that I'm adding the green ones. They go in between the red stitches, so it makes it pretty easy to throw those in. I started by weaving every other green stitch under the red stitches, but it made such a negligible difference that I stopped after a couple inches. It just wasn't worth the time. The inner edge of the collar is finished with a blanket stitch, which was correct but not very pretty. I would prefer to put more of the braid from the cuff at the neck edge to finish it more cleanly. This is probably a modern thing. I did enjoy the look of the 2 collars together. While the rest of the kirtle was bulky, I thought the collars were very sharp looking. In a land where it is so cold most of the year, it would probably be nice to look good and stay warm. The belt. The belt. The belt is estimated to be about 6 feet long, plus the tied ends and tassels. This piece of braiding took me many hours, and then many more hours on top of that to knot the ends to the tassels. It was stunning when finished, however. Rather than try to keep 12 strands of braid going in my hands, I grabbed a kumihimo plate and bobbins to keep everything neat and under good tension as I worked. The pattern for braiding that I used was: take your outside yarn, go over 3, under 2, and switch the middle 2 yarns left over right. Repeat on the other side, outside yarn, over 3, under 2, and switch the middle left over right. I did this for hours and was very glad to have the bobbins to keep everything from getting tangled up and the kumihimo plate to keep my place when I needed to take a break. The tied ends were created with a repeating forward knot, just like when we used to make friendship bracelets as kids. The outer 2 knotted sections of each side all follow the same pattern, while the inner 2 knotted sections match each other but are a different pattern. Each tied section adds to the width, making the tassel larger than the top of the tied section. The hood. The hood might actually be my favorite part of this outfit. It was the original reason I found this burial because I was looking for a unique hood pattern. It certainly stands out. One of the exciting things about the project was that I ordered bronze sewing needles and bronze pins to use while sewing. I needed to get used to the bronze needle since it does bend a little, but once I got used to it, it was easy to use. I liked how the needle went right through the wool. It had a good feeling to it. The hood itself is very versatile. You can tie it in the front to keep out the wind, rain, and snow. Or you can tie it in the back to keep it out of your way while still enjoying some shade from the sun. It stays in place on your head very well because of this tying feature. Accessories. I am also wearing knit socks, woolen leg wraps, and gillies. The knit socks are unusual for a Sami woman, but would have been easy and normal to make for a Norse woman. The leg wraps cannot be seen under the pants, but they match the kirtle and are held in place with bands of small trim wrapped around the shoe and leg. As far as shoes, we do not know the shape of her shoes since there were just pieces of leather where the soles should be. I went for gillies since it's an ancient shoe design. However, she also might have been wearing turn shoes of some kind. The outfit as a whole is extremely comfortable and easy to work in. The burial. The body was laid on the left side, sloping to the north, according to the finder Richard Olson. The knees were pulled up, the right arm stretched down to the knees, and the head was facing left. The fact that she was buried in all of her clothing suggests to me that this was not a criminal and this was not an execution. The fact that she was buried in her fine clothing suggests that it was not a robbery. It doesn't seem like a body dump. Someone left her with her belongings and then took the time to bind and sew her into a fine hand-woven blanket for burial. They dug a grave and lined it with birch branches to honor her. This is a woman who was buried by people who loved her. This burial was like no other bog body. It was special.